The mahogany-paneled office of Whitman and Associates felt suffocating as Mr. Whitman, my grandfather's attorney for 40 years, adjusted his reading glasses and began reviewing the will. My brother Marcus sat beside me, barely containing his excitement, while our parents watched from the leather sofa against the wall. To my grandson Marcus Sullivan, Mr. Whitman read, his voice steady and professional. I leave my investment portfolio valued at approximately $8.2 million, my properties in the Hamptons and Aspen, and my collection of vintage automobiles. Marcus's smirk grew wider with each item. I gripped the armrests of my chair, trying to keep my expression neutral. To my granddaughter Isabella, Mr. Whitman continued, pausing briefly, I leave the old vineyard in Sonoma Valley, including all structures and equipment therein. The room fell silent for a moment before Marcus burst into laughter. The vineyard? You mean that worthless patch of dead grapes? Oh, this is perfect. I felt my face flush. The vineyard had been Grandpa Antonio's pride and joy when I was young. But in recent years, the vines had withered and the property had fallen into disrepair. Most of the family assumed it was worthless now, just 50 acres of failing grapevines and crumbling buildings. Enjoy your dead grapes, Izzy, Marcus continued, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. I'll send you a postcard from Aspen. My mother reached out to pat my hand. Darling, perhaps you could sell it. The land must be worth something. Actually, Mr. Whitman interjected, the will stipulates that the vineyard cannot be sold for at least 1 year after inheritance. It must remain in Isabella's possession for that duration. Marcus laughed even harder. A whole year stuck with that dump. Grandpa's final joke. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Without a word, I walked out of the office, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. I needed air. I needed space. Most of all, I needed to understand why Grandpa Antonio had done this. The vineyard had been special once. I remembered summer afternoons spent there as a child, following my grandfather through the rows of vines as he checked each cluster of grapes with careful hands. He would tell me stories about our Italian heritage, about the ancient art of winemaking, about the secrets hidden in the soil and sun. Marcus never cared for those stories. He preferred the country club, the fancy cars, the life of luxury our family's wealth provided. To him, the vineyard was just an embarrassing reminder of our immigrant roots. The next morning, I drove out to the property, armed with the keys Mr. Whitman had given me. The gates creaked as I pushed them open, rust flaking off onto my hands. The once beautiful villa that served as the main house looked shabby now, its yellow paint peeling, shutters hanging askew. But the vines, I frowned as I walked between the rows. They didn't look dead at all. Neglected? Yes. But there was life there. New growth was pushing through despite the lack of care. These weren't dead grapes at all. I made my way to the villa, pushing open the heavy wooden door. The interior was dusty but otherwise intact. Grandpa Antonio's furniture was still there, covered in sheets. His books lined the shelves, volumes about viticulture, wine production, and Italian history. On his desk, I found an envelope with my name written in his familiar scrawl. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, then Mr. Whitman has executed my will as instructed. I know the others will think I've played a cruel joke on you, leaving you the vineyard while Marcus receives the millions. Let them think that. You always understood what Marcus never could, that true wealth isn't always measured in dollars. There's more to this vineyard than dead grapes, my dear, much more. You were the only one who ever listened to my stories, who understood the value of our heritage. Now it's time for you to discover the truth about what you've inherited. In my study, behind the copy of the Divine Comedy on the third shelf, you'll find a key. Use it wisely. With all my love, Nonno Antonio. I went to the bookshelf, my heart pounding. There it was, a well-worn copy of Dante's masterpiece. Behind it, just as promised, was an old iron key attached to a faded red ribbon. But what did it open? I spent the rest of the day exploring the villa, searching for any lock the key might fit. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the dusty windows, I finally slumped into Grandpa's old leather chair, exhausted and frustrated. That's when I noticed something odd about the oriental rug beneath my feet. One corner was slightly worn, as if it had been repeatedly pulled back. I knelt down and lifted the corner, revealing a trapdoor set into the hardwood floor. The key fit perfectly. The hinges groaned as I pulled the door open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Using my phone's flashlight, I made my way down the steps, the air growing cooler with each step. What I found at the bottom made me gasp. I was standing in a vast wine cellar, stretching far beneath the villa. Rows upon rows of bottles lined the walls, their labels bearing dates going back decades. But these weren't just any wines. I recognized some of the labels from Grandpa's stories. These were some of the rarest vintages in the world. And there was more. At the far end of the cellar, behind a heavy iron gate, I saw something that made my knees weak. Hundreds of bottles with labels I'd never seen before, bearing our family name, Sullivan Vineyards. Another envelope waited on a small table, next to what appeared to be an ancient ledger. "My clever girl," the note began, "I knew you'd find this place. Now let me tell you about your real inheritance." I sat down on an old wooden stool, my hands shaking as I opened the ledger. The first entry was dated 1923, written in my great-grandfather's hand. "First batch of Sullivan Reserve complete. The secret recipe works perfectly. We may have lost everything in Italy, but here, we will build something greater." As I read on, the true magnitude of what I'd inherited began to sink in. This wasn't just a collection of wine. This was a legacy, a secret passed down through generations. And my grandfather had trusted me, not Marcus, to continue it. I heard footsteps upstairs, probably my mother coming to check on me. I quickly closed the trapdoor and replaced the rug. This secret wasn't ready to be shared yet. Not until I understood exactly what Grandpa Antonio had left me. That night, I stayed late at the villa, poring over the ledger by lamplight. The story it told was extraordinary. Our family hadn't just been winemakers, we had been pioneers, innovators who had developed a unique method of aging wine that produced exceptional results. But in 1976, something had happened. The entries became cryptic, referring to a threat and a decision to protect the legacy. That's when my grandfather had apparently started letting the vineyard appear to fail, all while maintaining this incredible cellar in secret. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Hey sis, just bought a new Ferrari with some of my inheritance. Want to see pics of your new grapes?" I smiled, thinking of the treasures hidden beneath my feet. "No thanks," I replied. "I'm a bit busy right now. These dead grapes need a lot of attention." If only he knew. If only any of them knew. But they would soon enough. Because I had just found something in the ledger that changed everything. A detailed record of our family's secret winemaking technique, worth millions to the right buyers. And this was just the beginning of what I would discover in Grandpa Antonio's vineyard. Over the next few weeks, I split my time between studying the ledger and exploring the vineyard. Each day brought new discoveries that made me understand just how brilliant my grandfather's plan had been. The dead vines weren't neglected at all. They were rare Italian varietals, carefully maintained to look unproductive to outsiders, while actually thriving in the unique microclimate of our valley. Grandpa had been cultivating them in plain sight, letting everyone assume the vineyard was failing. The cellar contained more than just wine. Hidden behind a false wall, I found a state-of-the-art wine testing laboratory, complete with modern equipment carefully disguised to look old and unused. Everything was still functional, just waiting for someone to understand its purpose. But the real treasure was in those mysterious Sullivan Reserve bottles. According to the ledger, our family had developed a unique aging process that created wines of exceptional quality. The technique combined traditional Italian methods with innovations my great-grandfather had developed after coming to America. One entry particularly caught my eye. "The key is patience. While others rush their wines to market, we wait. Nature cannot be hurried, and neither can perfection." I hired Sarah Chen, a renowned wine expert, to evaluate some of the bottles. She arrived early one morning, skeptical but professional. I led her down to the cellar, enjoying her growing amazement as she realized what she was seeing. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, examining one of the Sullivan Reserve bottles. "These vintages, some of them are legendary. Wine collectors have been searching for them for years." "What do you mean?" She carefully held up a bottle from 1954. Sullivan Reserve appeared briefly in the 1950s and 60s. The wines were exceptional, unlike anything else being produced in America at the time. Then they vanished. The last known bottle sold at auction for $92,000. I nearly dropped the ledger I was holding. $92,000? For one bottle? And that was just a 62 vintage. These older ones, she gestured to the racks, they could be worth far more to the right buyers. My phone buzzed, another text from Marcus. Hey sis, having a party at my new Hamptons house this weekend. You can come if you're not too busy with your dead grapes. I ignored it, focusing instead on Sarah's evaluation. By the end of the day, she estimated that the cellar's contents alone were worth upwards of $40 million. And that was just the wine. The real value lay in the family's secret techniques. You could revolutionize the industry, Sarah said excitedly. This aging process, it's brilliant. Would you consider selling the formula? I thought of the ledger of my grandfather's careful plans. No, this stays in the family. That evening, as I sat in Grandpa's study reviewing his notes, my mother arrived unannounced. Darling, you've been out here for weeks, she said, looking around disapprovingly at the dusty furniture. Marcus is worried about you. We all are. Maybe it's time to accept that this place is, well, dead. I supplied, watching her carefully. Just worthless dead grapes? She sighed. I know you love spending time here with your grandfather, but you need to think practically. Even if you can't sell it yet, you don't have to waste your time here. I considered telling her everything, about the cellar, the wines, the secrets I'd discovered. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of how they'd all laughed at the will reading. I'm fine, Mom, really. The vineyard needs work, but I'm handling it. She left looking worried, probably heading straight to Marcus to report on my concerning behavior. Over the next month, I put my plan into action. I hired a small, trustworthy team to help restore the vineyard, making them sign ironclad NDAs. We began carefully rehabilitating the vines, though I made sure the property still looked unimpressive from the outside. I also started quietly meeting with high-end wine distributors, letting them sample some of the younger Sullivan Reserve vintages. The response was overwhelming. One buyer offered $200,000 for a single case. Then came the day I'd been both anticipating and dreading. The annual Valley Wine Association dinner, where all the local vineyard owners gathered to showcase their wines. Marcus, who had recently taken up wine collecting as his latest hobby, would be there with his new society friends. I arrived wearing a simple black dress, carrying a single bottle of Sullivan Reserve 1954. Marcus spotted me immediately. Izzy, I didn't expect to see you here. He laughed, champagne glass in hand. Did you bring some of your dead grapes to show everyone? The group around him snickered. I noticed James Morrison, owner of the Valley's most prestigious vineyard, among them. Actually, I said calmly, I brought something to share. I placed the bottle on the tasting table. James Morrison's eyes widened as he recognized the label. Is that? It can't be. He picked up the bottle with trembling hands. A Sullivan Reserve. Original vintage. The room went quiet. Marcus's smirk faltered. Impossible, he said. That vineyard never produced anything like that. Would you like to try it? I asked innocently. The wine was everything the ledger had promised. As people tasted it, the reactions ranged from disbelief to reverence. James Morrison actually had tears in his eyes. This is extraordinary, he whispered. We'd heard rumors about Sullivan Reserve, but to actually taste it. Marcus was staring at me, his face pale. Where did you get this? From our grandfather's cellar, I said simply, along with about 600 other bottles just like it. The next day, the calls started coming in. Distributors, collectors, other vineyard owners, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. Had Sullivan Reserve really returned? Marcus showed up at the vineyard that afternoon, his Ferrari kicking up dust on the drive. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded, following me through the villa. All this time you knew about this. Like you knew about the value of those dead grapes? I countered. Besides, Grandpa left the vineyard to me, remember? Along with everything in it. But I'm the businessman in the family. I could help you market this, make it huge. I stopped and turned to face him. No, Marcus. You're the one who wanted the quick money, the fancy cars, the society life. Grandpa knew that. He also knew I would understand what this place really means. What are you talking about? I led him down to the cellar, watching his face as he took in the rows of priceless wines, the hidden laboratory, the legacy our grandfather had protected. This isn't just about money, I explained. This is about our heritage, about doing things the right way, even if it takes time. Grandpa didn't want someone who would sell everything to the highest bidder. He wanted someone who would understand the value of patience. Marcus sat heavily on a wine crate, looking around with new eyes. All this time, while we thought it was worthless, he was protecting it. I finished, waiting for the right moment, the right person to continue the legacy. 1 year later, Sullivan Vineyards released its first new vintage in decades. The waiting list for bottles stretched years into the future. The secret aging process remained safely in family hands, passed down through Grandpa's careful notes. Marcus. He actually became a valuable ally once he understood the true nature of our inheritance. His business skills helped modernize our distribution. The major decisions still required my approval. Mom and Dad finally stopped worrying about my obsession with the vineyard, especially after Forbes featured Sullivan Reserve in their luxury wines issue. The article included a lovely photo of me in the cellar, holding one of our grandfather's original bottles. I kept Grandpa's study exactly as it was, though I did add one thing: a framed copy of his last note to me, the one that started it all. Sometimes, when I'm reviewing wine orders or checking the vines, I stop to read it again. The villa is fully restored now, its yellow paint fresh and bright. The dead vines produce some of the most sought-after grapes in the valley, but I still maintain the appearance of selective neglect around the edges of the property, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are the ones others dismiss as worthless. Last week, I received an interesting offer. Carlton Vineyards, our biggest competitor, wanted to buy us out. They offered $100 million for the property and rights to the Sullivan name. I thought of those long ago summer afternoons with Grandpa Antonio, of his stories about our family's heritage, of the love and patience that went into every bottle of Sullivan Reserve. My response was brief. Thank you, but Sullivan Vineyards isn't for sale. Some things are worth more than money. That evening, I opened one of Grandpa's special bottles. A 1976 vintage he'd made the year he decided to protect our legacy by letting the world think it was worthless. As I sipped it on the villa's terrace, watching the sun set over the allegedly dead vines, I smiled thinking about how wrong perceptions can be. Marcus called just then. Hey sis, heard about the Carlton offer. Pretty impressive for a bunch of dead grapes, huh? Very impressive, I agreed. Want to come over? I'm opening something special from Grandpa's cellar. On my way, he said, I never properly apologized for laughing at your inheritance. No need, I told him. Just remember what Grandpa always said. True worth isn't in what something appears to be, but in what it actually is. After hanging up, I raised my glass to the vineyard, to the hidden cellar below, and most of all, to the grandfather who knew that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones that others think are worthless. The dead grapes had given me something far more valuable than Marcus's millions. They had given me a legacy, a purpose, and the satisfaction of proving that patience and understanding are worth more than quick profits and flashy cars. And that, as Grandpa Antonio would say, is worth all the gold in the world.